the concept of stewardship and the concept of ownership, or responsible ownership. There are things about the emergence of the focus on stewardship, which has happened in the last 5 or 6 years, that I think is very interesting. The idea of thinking of oneself as in a chain that has a history and a future. And all of that, I think, is a helpful perspective. But I think in some ways, in my part of the field, which is really on the family process of governance and continuity, sometimes we take that too far. That the issue is that, because if you know the actual definition of the word steward, and I looked it up again, is it's one who manages property, finances, or affairs of someone else, for someone else. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the anxiety of a parental generation, which we have all seen and which we've talked about some. And it certainly is the question, as I think about what do families worry about, come to me with most often around the world, not just in North America, certainly. First and second generation families, about their children, it's what can I do to make sure that what we have accomplished, what we have gathered in terms of financial and other kinds of capital, is a positive for my children and not a negative. It's good for them, an opportunity, and not a demotivator, not robbing them of their experience of life, because they could never go through the same sequence that we went through as we learned and as we changed over time. How do I make this a positive and not a negative? And parents are anxious about this everywhere. My dilemma is that sometimes we have reacted to that anxiety a little bit by taking away the concept of ownership from the next generations, and sometimes, and being concerned about the misuse and the negative aspects of inherited wealth and so forth, and at that, creating, I think, what I see quite often now is a generation who are quite afraid of their wealth, have concerns about risk, many concerns about risk, don't want to, are reluctant to take on the responsibility of being up front, of growing, of leading in their generation, and are paralyzed to some extent by the concerns of losing as opposed to the opportunity for building, for gaining, for reinventing, for doing it again in a different way, in their own way, and so forth. And I came to the conclusion that I thought that it's important to make the distinction between dreaming big and living large, and not to let the fear about the latter undermine our ability to create for our children our investment, our belief in, and our confidence in their ability to do the former, and supporting that. So how do you do that? I mean, it's partly, okay, now what? And I love all the ideas about education, because I think that's the central way you do that, to not just provide the opportunity, but to say for parents in general, and I also love the concept of parenting. I think good parenting is something that we all talk about, and then the parents say, well, okay, how do I do, I mean, I want to, how do I do that? Part of it is to convey the message that wealth is an opportunity. It's a characteristic of who we are in the family, but it needs to be an opportunity, a platform for creating meaning. That's the task. And for parents to say, and if you want to do that, then you have to make an investment in yourself. And if you do that, we make an investment in you, in your discovery of who you are. And partly it's dreams, as Jay and Sarah talked about this morning. I think it starts there. It goes also beyond dreams to a sense of authenticity, a sense of self-knowledge, a sense of skills. What am I good at? How do I get better at it? What education or experiences do I need to have that make me, in fact, feel the self-confidence of competence? That's where leadership comes from. Now, the other piece of that part's easy. The piece that is more where I disagree with some of my colleagues, or they disagree with me, is I think inherently going with that is then there has to be responsibility and authority that goes with that. And that's the part of stewardship that I have the most trouble with. That, in fact, you cannot ask young adults to rise, to invest themselves in a self-development process unless the self-determining authority to govern their own affairs comes with it. And if we tie their hands too much out of a fear of them not fulfilling their responsibility to future generations, they will never grasp the risk, the enthusiasm, the opportunity for their obligations to their own generation, to themselves. And that's, I think, the best way they serve and prepare for their children, is to be everything that they can be as well.